Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 87. In this episode, you'll hear why Carolyn Edge is so badass. So, a couple things that I think is super badass about Carolyn. First, how she leaned into paper quilling. Second, letting go of perfectionism. Third is her mindset work. I freaking loved it. And then fourth is not fitting into somebody else's box. Did you hear my dog grumble there? You kind of heard probably the pitter-patter of his feet, and then he kind of made a noise like, maybe I'm talking too much. But anyways, let's get to it. I'll share why Carolyn Edge is so badass. But first, if you haven't joined the Facebook group, totally do so. It's a badass group of women who are very supportive of each other, and we just continue the conversation. So I would love for you to join the Ordinary to Badass Facebook group today. All right, so let's get to it. The first thing that I thought was so badass about Carolyn Edge is how she did paper quilling for fun. She had liked it for a long time, but she started doing it again and then was doing different craft stuff at the library and just kind of really leaned into doing crafts and doing stuff that she liked. She said she was just absolutely obsessed with paper quilling. So here's the thing. It's easy to make excuses to not do the things that we are obsessed about. Like, everyone here is busy. We're all busy. We all have life going on. But the things that you're obsessed about, why not make space in your life to do them? It doesn't have to turn into a full-time business for you, but just merely doing the things that excite you, that bring you joy, that brings a new energy just to your life. So what is something that you enjoy doing, but you haven't been doing lately? Why aren't you leaning into it? So that would be my goal for you for this week, is how can you lean into something that you love? How can you lean into it just a little bit more? I don't care if it's 5 minutes a day. Really, when I read James Clear's books about Atomic Habits, I think it was called, it's just doing the smallest thing possible to establish habit. So like, even if you just got out your pen and paper every day, if you were going to draw and you just got out like crayons and paper or colored pencils, paper, whatever you're going to do, get that stuff out every single day. You don't even have to do any art, or just make an agreement with yourself. I'm going to do 5 minutes a day for whatever your thing is, whatever the thing that lights you up, but just take one tiny step to include that in your life. So that would be a goal for you this week. What is it that you're not leaning into that you absolutely love or obsessed with? And find a way to lean into it, even if it's just a little bit. All right. The second thing that I thought was so badass about Carolyn was she said, just do C-level work. Let go of perfection. And that's what she had to do when putting her art out into the world, because the tendency is to think it's not good enough. You don't want other people to see it unless it's perfect. And the truth is, just do it. Just get it out there. If you're waiting for something to be perfect, it is never going to be perfect enough for you. It could be amazing to other people, but to you, you're just always going to find something to critique yourself on or criticize, criticize what you're doing, and that's not going to help move you forward. So sometimes you just have to be okay with putting out C-level work and just completely dropping the perfectionism. Now, I get it. Like, it's hard to put stuff out into the world that you don't feel like is perfect or you feel like you're going to be judged on. But wouldn't you rather be judged on something that you're at least putting out into the world, on something that you're doing? Like, half the time, the people that are judging you are people, A, you don't care about, and B, they're people that are not doing anything themselves. They are too worried about being perfect, or they have their own ego tied in, so they're not putting anything out. So kind of like Brene Brown said, like, you only want to hear from the people that are in the arena doing the work. So ignore the haters, ignore the people that have something to say about it not being perfect, because they're not in the arena working it out for themselves. And just getting the work out there is what it's all about, or getting whatever you're passionate about out there is what it's about. It's not about what anybody else thinks about your work. So take it from Carolyn, do C-level work. Be okay with that. It does not have to be perfect. Now, the third thing that I loved what Carolyn talked about was mindset. We all struggle with mindset, or I don't know anybody who doesn't. One way or another, there's probably a certain area of your life where you struggle with your mindset. Even if you're a strong, confident person, it can be hard. Like, it can be easy to fall into the trap of self-doubt. So Carolyn talked about catching limiting beliefs and asking yourself, is this really true? I read a book about this by Byron Katie called Loving What Is. And I'll be honest, the first part of the book, I thought, this is bullshit, not going to do it. But then by the end, for some miraculous reason, I stuck around till the end. I really loved it, and it was life-changing. Some of the thoughts that we think are not true, but we just assume that they are. So when you start thinking negative thoughts or going down a rabbit hole, consider asking yourself, is this really true? And, it's just because it's true to you does not mean that everybody else would think it was true. And how do you know it's true? How can you 100% say that that's true? So maybe it's not. But don't be afraid to question the things that you are saying to yourself. And then Carolyn talked about sales when she started selling her art and how it was hard. And she used to say to herself, what if no one comes? What if no one comes? So she had a coach that said, hey, consider flipping that thought. So instead of saying, what if no one comes? Carolyn started saying, what if it sells out? What if her craft program or paper quilling course sold out? And then she started to see different results. So instead of thinking of the negative all the time or the bad outcome that could possibly happen, think of what is like the best possible outcome that you could get. And how freaking badass would that be to overcome that and to do that thing and get the best results? What limiting beliefs do you have? And a limiting belief is typically a belief that you have that you think is true, but everybody else doesn't think it's true. But that belief is often holding you back. It's holding you back from things that you could accomplish. So definitely catch your limiting beliefs and ask yourself, is this really true? And then consider flipping it. Instead of what if no one comes? Ask yourself, what if it sells out? All right. The fourth thing that I thought was so badass that Carolyn talked about was not fitting into someone else's box. Now, those are my words, not hers, but she really did talk about feeling like she grew up in an environment that was restrictive, living in the suburbs, and how she grew up or how she was raised is not or does not agree with the person that she wants to be today. You can sit there and try to fit into your parents' box, like the box that they put you in. And I'm not trying to say that like in a negative way, but what's good for your parents isn't always good for you. So other people might have expectations of you, but you don't have to fill those expectations. If it's not something that aligns with you and doesn't feel like it's you in your core, then guess what? You don't have to do it. And sometimes we think that others might think a certain way about us and what we do, but that's just our assumption. We don't know. So get out of the box. Stop living for other people's expectations of you. You only get one life, and to live a life that somebody else wants you to live, that you have no desire to live, sorry to break it to you, but life's too short. Too short. Nobody has time for all that. So reflect for a second. How are you trying to fit into other people's expectations? And where does that not align with who you are? You don't have to change anything today. You can just recognize it and think about it a little bit. But it just might make you happier. Or like Carolyn talked about, she felt liberated every step along the way, where she started doing things that her family didn't want her to do. And so like cussing. She wasn't allowed to cuss as a kid. Even as an adult, her parents don't think that good people cuss, but she does, because that doesn't align with what she thinks. So how does that work for you? Is there something that you're doing to fit into somebody else's expectations? All right, so just a quick recap. Carolyn Edge is so badass because she leaned into paper quilling, which she was obsessed about. She also dropped her perfectionism. You don't have to be perfect. The third thing she did was she really worked on her mindset. And it's easy to get stuck in traps or start believing the thoughts that we think unless you actually work on it. And believe me, it's not a one and done. It's something you constantly have to work at. Matter of fact, Carolyn said every 3 years she has some sort of breakthrough. So the work is never done. And don't be embarrassed by that. Keep doing the work. And the fourth thing that I thought was so badass about Carolyn Edge was that she wasn't fitting into somebody else's box. All right, I gotta know. Did you like this episode with Carolyn as much as I did? I thought she was so badass. I thought she was so badass. And I like how she's doing crafts with an edge. And looking at the edgier side of life. If you liked what Carolyn had to say, I totally think we should share some love, because she was vulnerable about her experience and what she went through. So if you liked it, hit Carolyn and I up on Instagram, like take a screenshot of the episode and send it to us on Instagram. Share some love. I think her handle is EdgecraftATX. So here's the thing, is when people are vulnerable, they open up, they are willing to share their story with us. So if there's one takeaway that you had from the episode, it would be so awesome if you shared it, because it takes guts sharing your story and sharing the things that you've went through. It's just not easy. So definitely let's show her some love. Hit her up on Instagram at EdgecraftATX, and I'm at Ordinary to Badass, and let her know one takeaway that you had from the episode. All right, that's about a wrap. Now, just a sneak peek for next week. For Monday, we will be having Sherry Lowe on the podcast. And for those of you that don't know, Sherry is the queen of free, and she paid off $127,000 in debt. How freaking amazing is that? So definitely you're going to want to tune in next week to hear the episode with Sherry Lowe. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future Spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.